So we're going to talk about de-risking. This is a really hot topic and really going to speak to a lot of developers. But I want to hear from you. What's interesting to you right now, Natalie? What's happening in your world on the day to day?
We're starting to see a lot of mergers and acquisitions in the renewable space as from the inception of the Inflation Reduction Act a couple of years ago, we've had new renewable startup companies come in and acquire projects, acquire land, get these projects ready for NTP. And a lot of them are selling the projects off now to folks that are actually going to operate them. So we're seeing a lot of those transactions happen. We're getting to help do some of the due diligence on those projects and make sure that, the buyer is really getting what they say they're getting from the seller. We're getting involved sometimes with the sellers, getting things ready to package up for the buyers. So outside of all of our day-to-day stuff with acquisitions and title policies, we're having a lot of fun in the M&A space too.
Yeah, it's the natural progression of things, right? We've seen it in oil and gas. We've seen it in some of the early renewables efforts. When you have this influx of activity and I guess essentially supply of deal, there's the consolidation. People are getting acreage position. They're getting those primo positions, and they've got them locked up, and they've taken it 70% of the way there, and then they're wanting to package it up real nice and pretty for someone to buy. And we see it in oil and gas. We see it in all these spaces. So it's a familiar thing to us. We've talked a lot about it internally over the last year and a half, and we're starting to really see that come into play. So, some of the things we want to talk about today is, things you need to be thinking of leading up to your due diligence or your transaction, and some actions you can take from a buyer standpoint when it comes to potentially securing either your individual site or a group of sites from another operator or someone who's putting a package together to sell.
Yeah.
All about
Absolutely.
title today.
Yeah, you're spot on, Brent. And a lot of this is, even to get to that M&A point where you're ready to sell an asset, you have to, or you're ready to operate it yourself. It has to be fully de-risked. And a lot of what we're needing to do in that space is have proper mineral title run for them. Make sure that they're addressing all of the mineral owners in oil and gas producing states where they have these energy projects so they can secure the proper surface waivers, get fully insurable. So that's another major component of what we're seeing as the large amount of activity right now in the renewable space.
It's very much mineral title oriented right now. But maybe just to kind of step this back to Title 101, because, as landmen, we both career landmen, Natalie and I, we take a lot of things for granted, as far as steps you take when you're securing an agreement or an option, and the steps you take progressively with de-risking an asset or a property throughout its kind of life cycle up to and through your permitting process and ultimately construction. We take those things for granted. So maybe Natalie, can you just step
Yeah.
back and just bullet point, hey, during these basic steps of your acquisition effort and up to say through your title commitment, let's just bullet point where you need to have title done, what kind of work you need to maybe do in support of your acquisition efforts, and then when these other kind of steps of title come into play.
Sure. So, ideally when we move into a new prospect and say we're acquiring the asset for a company, ideally we like to go out and lease check before we start acquiring assets to see who else is out there in the area. And then when we're acquiring the assets, as we're doing the contracts, work harder. I mean, work smarter, not harder. Sorry. So we like to do a quick cursory run to verify surface ownership for these surface agreements that we're doing. We may run it back, 20 to 50 years, depending on what the client approves and is wanting. But I make, arguments for both sides and then let them choose what's best for them and their budgets. So we'll do that just to verify the contract. So we don't have to, it's always hard to have to go out and get somebody that you
Yeah.
got to sign the first time, sign two, three, four more times because of
Yeah.
errors. You don't want to do
Yeah.
that.